Hey everybody, it's Wild Bill and the Weather Girl, and we are on an adventure to kind of get more information for our Pearl Island project. Right, Bill?
That's exactly right. So we are doing a camp on Pearl Island in Alaska. And one of the things that we decided on is that for creature comforts, we want to have power. So we're thinking solar and wind. So we are up north Michigan is what it's called. Sometimes some people do the new name, I think it's called the upper hand.
Yeah.
And we're going to see a power expert, solar wind expert that's put together a lot of these systems, and we don't have to go to the upper Michigan to see it as far as alternative energy goes. But we're going to be close to another mission that we're on, so we're going to stop by and see Mr. Tim. You don't always have to be standing to take a shower.
Bright sunny skies. It's so humid and hot. In the Defender, and we are riding right now into the rain. Let's take a look at that. Part of our Pearl Island adventure is to build a power plant, and today we're getting that plan together, and we've got the mastermind behind it all, so we're going to show you that. Right, Bill?
Right on. So Tim, our expert here, our solar expert, I bought this unit at kind of a, let's say, yard sale, garage sale. Right? Yeah, well, a company had bought 10 of them, only used 8, had 2 left over. So Tim here is going to help us look at this because I don't have any idea what I bought, but I knew that it was a deal. Kind of look at it and say, hey, what do we have here? Where are we going? What do we need to do?
Well, Tim, the Weather Girl will tell you that I've checked out the weather forecast over the last year and a half and did my own analysis like you were doing. And there's a constant wind on the island at about 10 miles per hour, day or night. So, and then it can obviously increase to 45 mile per hour gusts and well over that. But in general, you have at least 10 mile per hour winds. Pretty constant there.
Well, the nice part is while you're there, this will be great, but you can shunt this. There's a switch that you can take, shunt it, so when you leave, it just goes and parks and doesn't do anything. So that's a good thing.
Great.
Good.
So you're
Fantastic. I'm feeling better by the minute, Tim, that my dollars were well spent.
Well,
I'm not sure we're...
as long as the voltage is right.
Yeah.
I have to get there.
So we're 24 volts, right?
If it's 24 volt, that's most likely what we'll do in the
It
24
says-
volt
I read
system.
it on the tag. It says 24 volts.
And then you're good to go.
Okay, perfect.
Should be, well, you're still going to be giving it 5 amps an hour. I mean, that's huge. I mean, you're not going to draw that.
Rated.
You're just not.
So what do we mean by we're not going to draw that? It means that the system for the house that I have isn't going to require that much power based on what we're putting in it?
We'll put a 3,000 watt inverter, so that means that you can have up to 3,000 watt draw in your building. This will put 500 watts back in it while it's spinning the whole time. So your battery capacity, all this is going to do is keep your batteries peaked off with your solar.
Great.
So then, unless you want more needs and wants.
Yeah, we do.
So because our units are so small, right? We could maybe drive 2 individual households with this?
Possibly. Or
With the solar? With solar?
I would think so.
Okay.
I would think so. And if not, an inverter unit with the solar that you had another inverter, you could have it charge both sets of banks of batteries and have one inverter. Otherwise, you can couple the inverters. Let's say you had more power source down the road. You can couple 2 inverters to get it. So if you have a 3,000 watt inverter, you can couple that. So you have 6,000 watts. And they go up to 10. And right now we have a 2,200 watt inverter, and we have not run a generator in 10, 11 years.
Wow.
We have 800 amp hours worth of batteries. 1 lithium battery is equal to that.
Okay.
So now all of a sudden you got a load.
So what Tim and I have been talking about is that right now we're a day after the longest day of sun in Alaska, right? But what am I going to do in the winter? Right. So our thought is that go to the wind turbine in the winter because I don't have as much sun as our power source.
And typically, wind turbines, when your battery's completely peaked off, park. So when the battery's healthy, this shuts down.
Okay.
So should work good.
Good.
And I'm assuming they get a lot of wind there.
Yeah,
Yes.
just a little.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we should say this is that we're on Pearl Island in Alaska and we're remote.
So the great part about our Pearl Island adventures, not only are we using sun and wind, but we're also using water. Tim has a pretty great plan for us. So we're going to check out this plan. Okay.
So Bill just
Tim, first of all, I want to ask you, is this AutoCAD?
it's
Or is this hieroglyphic?
auto Tim.
I love it.
Okay,
Stick
auto
people.
Tim.
Look at the stick people. I love it. I love it.
So yeah, this is Jupiter planning here. So you think about it, he has the cabin, and he told me the pond had maybe up to 15 feet of lift. So I just kind of thought about, okay, we'd have a line and don't want it to freeze during the winter, so you'd make a little pump hose, dump it in there, and then maybe put it into a tank up inside the building, and that was my idea. So when you fill it, it overfills, so you can't overfill it inside the cabin. And then, so that would be our water source, and then you'd have a 24-volt pump in here to pressurize the whole cabin. And there's your water. And then you would have solar, you have a lithium battery and a inverter and a solar charger in the cabin or on the cabin, and there's your power source, and you're definitely.
So Tim, if I'm in a typical cabin, now mind you, I'm going to be active all day, right? So I'm not going to be in the cabin much, right? What do you think my average water use would be? And let's make an assumption I take a shower every day, which isn't true. But let's think, I don't know.
So 2 people there, because you think about it, camping.
Right.
Yep.
We have probably on this camper, we have maybe 70 gallons of fresh water, and we could probably, if we pay attention to what we're doing, we could probably manage over a week.
Okay. So which is really good because that's not going to tap out my power source every day. I need to run my pump to get water into the
It
cabin.
depends how big your holding tank.
Yeah.
And I would say, let's say your holding tank in your cabin is 100, which isn't that big of a tank, 100 or 150 gallon. It would last you a week or two.
Yeah. So put it in perspective, right? 100-gallon tank, right? Do the math, would be like 255-gallon barrels,
Yep.
right? Essentially, it's that. It's not bad at all.
No.
It's not huge.
No,
Right.
no. And if you do it, you set it up right. If it's elevated, you put it in a spot where it's not going to take up much square footage. If it's somewhat elevated, it's going to naturally give you some pressure into your tank, we're going to say into a 24-volt pump, but also now you can have like a gas on the hot water heater on demand,
yes.
and now you're set for your hot water. Everything's all done.
So hot water on demand, it needs electric and natural gas?
Nope, just all it needs is natural gas.
Okay.
And it looks at flow. If there's enough flow, when you turn your water on, it turns the gas on, and it
Gotcha.
automatically goes.
Gotcha.
So it's not bad.
Yeah, okay. That is very good because one of the reasons is that I got to consider the weight that's going to be in the top two. So let's do a little extra on that on the build up, and it should be good for the water on top.
Definitely, whatever corner or whatever you put this,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to make sure that it's structurally underneath
Sure.
an extra pylon.
And the advantage you have too is that it is inside, right? So
Right.
typically, that if I needed a heat source so it wouldn't freeze, if I left in the winter, I can also drain it out and be done.
That's right. And like you said, if you set this up right, so it fills into here as soon as you shut off your pump down below and there's no check valve on it, it's gonna back drain your whole hose. And so your overflow, you can't overflow it. And then on the pump side of it, where it's gonna go into the cabin, you're gonna have a valve there so you can just dump it and it goes outside of your building and it drains away. And so if you're smart about all this, well, you can be.
So Tim, we're having the conversation because you weren't sure that I was going to be able to create enough pressure to get it up into the tank
Draw.
based on what the head difference was.
Typically, most pumps are limited to about 25 feet of head pressure. And then, like I said, we found just a regular sump pump that can push about 25 feet.
So head pressure is where I'm pulling it from to where it needs to be
It's
dispersed.
the highest point, that's
Okay.
head pressure. Yep. That's the highest point of lift. And then really, if we're only pushing it 12 feet, it might slow derate the pump a little bit by half, but what do we care? If you're there, you show up your first day and you plug it in and you're sitting there unloading and it's filling your tank while you're unloading all your stuff into your cabin for the 2 weeks or a month you're gonna be there. And once it starts hitting your overflow, you shut it off. And I honestly believe an inverter, your solar, and your windmill is gonna be able to do all this.
Yeah.
Because that little pump is a 3rd horse pump, so you're not gonna, I mean, you'll be drawing 30, 40 amps against your battery, but that's nothing at all. This is gonna be fine.
Cool.
Great.
Good.
Cool.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, Tim, I know you talked about wires and feeds and sizes, so you're gonna have to give me a little schooling here. So I have this piece that I bought that I have miscellaneous pieces. So I'm assuming I'm gonna need some for the panel internal, right? But I'm also gonna need, what do you call it, line wire or feed wire from our power source, our panels back to the master control panel, I'll say that.
Well, you need power from your solar into your charge controller. So you have to gauge it for how much solar that you have. So it's all based off of wattage, and then you need it from your batteries or your battery to the inverter. And then you're gonna need it from the generator into the inverter. And then so
And
everything.
then we'll need it in the home.
And you need it in the home. So everything is based off of the ampacity, and that's what you're protecting. If you're gonna push 30
Not capacity, ampacity.
ampacity, so if you're gonna have 60 amps or 30 amps, that's what you gauge it off of. This is number 8, so it should be good to at least 40 amps. And your solar panels, depending on how we do it and what charge controller we use, some solar panels, when you series them, your voltage doubles and your current stays the same. So most solar panels are about 10 amps. But if you took 4 solar panels, put them in series, you would have the voltage would keep on coupling up, and now you just get a charge control. It depends on what piece of equipment you use, and we gauge everything. We kind of have to know that before we do it. So, and then you fuse everything appropriately.
And this cabin is a little different because it's not 120, right? 120 volts.
The cabin will be 120 volts on the inside with the inverter, but the battery voltage will probably be 24 volts. And so the charge controller for the solar will be rated at 24 volts. It's actually a little bit higher than that, but I do have 120 volts inside, and they make inverters that you can have 220 if you need it.
So
it's up to you.
So I run across wire from.
Which is huge.
It's expensive. Is what you
Wire is so expensive. Wire has gone bonkers. 12-2, which everybody knows and everybody's used to be $60 a roll, is now $300 a roll. And that's what you're going to
Over what duration has that increased that fast?
Oh, in the last 2 years, it just went crazy. So now your cabin is going to be nothing but 12-2 on the inside, all your outlets and everything. You can run 14 for your lights, but typically you just run 12 throughout the whole thing. It's very expensive. But even this stuff.
So this is copper, right?
Yes.
Can I use aluminum wire too?
Sure you can. It's just derated. Everything's derated, so typically you usually have to upsize it one size if you use aluminum.
So
everything's based off of that, and length of run makes the difference too. So if our pump house is really long, far away, then you have to derate it because you're going to get line losses on the power going out to it. So we kind of need to know all that stuff before we do it. Same thing with the solar panels. You put them together, and how far away are we going to be? That dictates how much we should.
Sure.
Once we get all the way out to Pearl Island, it's not going to be a really good idea to be 6 feet short. That would be the bummer of it. So we have to make sure
6 inches short would even stone us when it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to make sure we know how your lengths are, and then are they usable? And if they are, then we're good to go.
So that's what we're talking about here with our UFA graphics, right? Is where are we from the house to the solar? How far is that?
And that's kind of why I wrote this out, just like this, kind of goofing around. I just wanted to say, okay, how far is this going to be, and do we have a wire that goes there? This one's not going to be. This one's not going to be as much as big as we think that we need. Yeah. Same with this one, because at first we thought of running a bigger pump, maybe even a 220, but after investigating, you can just run a regular trash pump, and that'll work fine. Because you're not pressured for time, and it's not going to maintain pressure.
No, we're not pressured for time.
Nope. So
if you're on Pearl, you're pretty much watching the scenery.
Right. So this is going to work all good.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. So Tim just gave us the layout of a system that he did. He did it on his phone. Okay. Tim, you've been talking about prices going up, right? You talked about the wire going up, right? The electronics are going up also. So here's what I'm going to ask you, right? I'm going to do this in the spring, right? Should I be buying now and planning now because you think that, I'm not going to be able to get it, or it's going to be a higher price in the spring?
I would think, well, like everything else is going up right now, it's kind of scary. So I would definitely batteries for sure, because the batteries, that's the one thing that's hard to get right now. It's very hard to get. Okay. And then the inverter, not so much. It's been easy to get, so it's been, I would say no on the inverter. I have a pretty good source. And they usually keep me heads up. They tell me heads up if things are going to go up, or they give me a heads up if it's going to be hard to get. So, and I can always pull that trigger anytime.
But the system that we want to do, I think you said a year ago or 2 years ago, was 30% less?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
And batteries, I was just told a battery I used to buy for 200 last year, I bought for 270, 280. I can't even get, and they're telling me it's over 420. Same battery. So that's what's crazy. I don't know what's happening. Are they trying to drive you? And that was a lead acid battery. So are they trying to drive you to lithium? The only thing bad about lithium, there's no proof yet.
Sure, there's no history.
Right, no history. So.
Okay, thank you.
On the next episode of Wild Bill and the Weather Girl, we head to Soldotna, Alaska, and we build our solar power plant. Will it work? Watch and see.
You don't always have to be standing to take a shower.
Bright sunny skies. It's so humid and hot.
In the Defender, and we are riding right now into the rain. Let's take a look at that.
But everything will have a male and a female on it, and there's no way to mess it up. Yep, because it'll have male, female here.
So I'm told, this is just a little off the subject, but I'm told that I want to mount that the arrays, the solar panels, right, at about the same lateral point I am. So I want to be at
Latitude,
yeah. So I want to be at 60 degrees. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of for the most well-rounded throughout the year. But if you're here from now until like fall,
Yeah.
you might consider doing like this for 45. It's gonna be more power producing than it is like today. And this could be like last summer. So 45 is usually a pretty easy number too. So we can just jump right into that. And how are you going to mount these? And if you've got them on a pallet out back, I don't know what rig you got for us to load them. So we can maybe check that out if you want. Kind of show them to you and show you the mounting hardware for them.
Yeah.
They're out back. It's out there the right length to hold the panels.
Sure.
And then you can just screw, bolt, or lag this right to your wooden structure that you're gonna make. And between if your angle's between 40 and 60, golden.
Well, you recommended 45, and we're not going to be out there all year.
Yeah.
We'll be bringing them back in September, so I'll go with 45.
Stick with 45.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
When you make up your frame,
Yep.
you're gonna have 2 rail sections that'll hold panels.
Okay.
So the distance between these 2 sections of rail is dictated by, you see some holes in the panels. Granted, the panels you're getting are much larger. This is just a small one. So that distance, it's probably going to be somewhere around.
It's not that big one, right?
Not the big one. It's kind of an in-between size.
See that next one down, John? That's how big the solar panels are.
It's going to be somewhere around 50 or so inches.
Okay, great.
And if you're off, it's
a little forgiving.
It has tolerance, yeah.
Sure,
It's like 20% or something, so I wouldn't sweat it. Work with the material that you got.
Yeah.
So there's 2 different types of clamps that we're giving you here. So one of them is made for the very end. So that just slides in the channel, locks against the grooves, and then you just screw this down. And on this guy, you just want to be really careful not to over torque.
Amen.
Get it nice and snug, go about a quarter turn past. It's stainless, so stainless doesn't like to be over torqued. And you don't want to put too much pressure on the panel either, because it could crack the glass.
Sure.
So just be aware of that when you're tightening down your hardware.
Okay, there's 2. Oh, this is the other 2.
Yeah, so this would go, this is called an end clamp.
Sorry, Mark. Are you sending me both, or
You have both, yep.
Okay.
You have both. Okay. So that's an end clamp, and this one's called a middle clamp.
Okay, great.
And they're kind of named as such. This one's made to end the array, and then your next solar panel will just bump against that.
Okay.
And you can tighten them down, it'll hold it, and you can put the next set of clamps in.
Okay.
So yeah, on the panels there's the male and female connectors on the end. And one's positive, one's negative. So we're gonna make 2 cables up for you, and they're gonna have these connectors on the end of them. That'll plug into the solar panels, and then it's gonna have the same connectors as what's on the inverter over there. So you're just basically, it's a glorified jumper, if you will. You just plug in here, plug into that guy, and then solar power is also helping to charge the batteries through that.
Here's a question.
This is an inline fuse, just for a little extra protection, but we've never had a fuse blow, so solar panels are pretty simple, bulletproof little guys.
So I can't plug everything in, hair dryers, toasters. What's the scoop? How should I handle these panels?
So you got to stay within the workable limit of the inverter. So it's 3,000 watts, which 3,000 watts actually can power quite a bit of stuff. A TV is probably only like 100 watts. Charging your phone, 10 or 15 watts. Ceiling fan running, maybe 200 watts. We have LED lights now, so very little power drop. So you could do a lot with 3,000, but there are certain handful of appliances that do use a lot of energy, like a curling iron. Pretty much anything that has to do with electric heat uses power quickly and a lot of it. Like for instance, that little heater that's on the workbench I just turned on, that's 1,000 watts. That's 1/3 of the payload on the inverter.
Yeah.
So you're not going to run a lot of that stuff off grid. You can run a domestic size refrigerator, no problem. Those are usually only a couple hundred watts max. Average day-to-day use, lights, outlets, refrigerator, television. Sounds like you guys are gonna have some Starlink internet.
Yep.
That's all fine and dandy.
Okay.
Yep, that's going to be kind of your just what we call base load. If you do need to run your cooktop that's electric or some of that stuff, you have the option to briefly turn on the generator to help assist with that. And by doing that, it's going to increase the lifetime of the batteries because you're not going to cycle them as often. And that's how a battery's life is measured, is in total cycles. So ideally, at night, you're discharging your battery, and then the next day, the solar array turns on, charges your batteries back up full, and you go into the next day with a full charged battery. You know, some of the variables are whether, you know, is solar going to be out there to make power for us, and then what it is that you are using. So a pretty simple tactic is to try to do more of your stuff electrically while the sun's out. So that could be some of the extracurricular electricity things you might have, like charging cordless tool batteries.
Okay.
Instead of trying to charge them at night,
There's no sun.
charge them during the day, try to kind of offset that loading in real time. And then again, you always have your generator as your backup, right? And what we want to do is take you from having to run the generator for everything to only having to run the generator for a handful of things every couple of days at the, you know, to recharge batteries. So that's the sweet spot that we want to get you. So energy is kind of difficult to measure over time, and that's how batteries are rated. So kilowatt hours is like your fuel tank on your batteries. So if you use 1,000 watts for 1 hour, that's 1 kilowatt hour. And that's kind of usually how we get charged for electricity on our bill. But typically your load is going to bounce around throughout the day a bunch.
Yeah.
It could be as low as 50, it could be as high as 300 or 400, maybe only for a couple seconds. So we won't know what that kilowatt hour usage is until you get kind of settled in your routine and your program. But ideally we want the battery pack to get you at least through the night. We'd like to get it, you know, a couple of days of runtime off the battery pack if we got crummy weather. And then, you know, that 24 volt battery bank on that display, when it says 24.0 volts, that's when you need to turn the generator on and charge.
Okay.
The generator comes on and charges, should charge for a couple hours, and that could depend how deep the batteries are discharged or what stuff you're running at the same time as the generator. But it's going to raise the voltage up from 24, you know, to a little bit under 30. It's going to hold it there for a couple hours while it's charging. Once it's done charging, you can shut the generator off, and the volts will come back down, and they're probably going to hover somewhere around 25 after the generator's been on. And then it's going to take some time for it to sag all the way from 25 down to 24. And that's just your runtime on the battery. But don't be fooled, because if you have a really big energy draw coming off the batteries, what happens is it will actually make the voltage go down while that load's running temporarily. And then when that load turns off, that voltage will kind of come back up to more of a resting voltage. So that voltage number fluctuates a little bit throughout the day. But we say if we see 24.0 volts for longer than 2 hours on that screen, then we need to charge up with the generator. Go ahead.
We used to think that you needed full sun for a solar panel. We still need that. Cloudy day?
Ambient light, so what we have today is going to get voltage out of the panels, you're going to get power out of it. You're not going to get max power like you would if it was a nice sunny day. It's going to do a little bit of something. So that can kind of dictate how you choose to use the energy, you know, kind of what's coming in. But normally I tell most people just kind of choose a comfortable lifestyle for you. And then if needed, you could potentially add more solar panels. You got a lot of panels that you can put on that inverter,
Okay.
as well as possibly adding more batteries down the road. But you'll have a much better idea after you use it for some time. You know,
Okay.
3,000 is the inverter payload.
Okay.
It can take 4,000 watts of solar in. So if that thing was running full tilt boogie, you could have a big enough solar array to run that in real time. But I doubt you guys will use that power. Just to give you an idea, I have a 2,000 square foot house built in the 60s in Kenai. We average like 400 or 500 watts almost all day. The highest it usually gets is about 1,600. But cooktop's gas, heating's gas, and the dryer's gas. Those are like our three big users. Yeah, so we're using a little bit more gas, but compared to electric, especially up here, that's a little more cost effective. Our electricity is like really expensive here.
Good. I think it's a good starter kit for what we need.
Yeah, I think you'd be able to run domestic appliances under the sun up to 3,000 watts. So, and then you got a little bit of a growth factor too, where you can, like I said, do something maybe down the road, more panels or batteries, and kind of grow into it a little bit.
If there would be a problem that I'm going to have ahead of time, typical thing that sometimes we'd have to troubleshoot, what would that be?
Maybe over discharging the battery. So maybe you don't catch it. It does go below that 24.0 volts. I think when it gets to 22 volts, it's like the low battery cutout on it. So kind of the operating procedure for that unit is to protect on the AC side and protect on the DC side. So it doesn't want the batteries to go too low because you can damage the batteries long term. So if that happened, you should be able to just turn on your generator and get them charging back up. Charge it back up. But what would happen is you might be watching TV and the power turns off because the inverter says the low battery cutout's been initiated. So you want to be mindful for that. You kind of already brought up power quality coming off the generator. Sometimes that's an issue, not being able to charge. Other than that, I mean, there shouldn't be any technical things you should have to do because we've already gone through the programming on the inverter and kind of told it what kind of working modes to do. Yeah, so it's geared for those batteries.
Great. That's what we want. Make it dummy proof for us, Mark. Make it dummy proof.
Yeah, your install should consist of like mounting the unit, getting your batteries in place, wiring down to your batteries, getting your solar panels mounted, and getting your panels wired to that unit. You should be able to turn it on. I'm thinking half a day.
That's what we were figuring.
More or less.
First day we get there, that's the first plan, is to get the panels up.
Yep, and you could table it, like depending on the weather, you could table the solar panel part. So the unit will work with just battery and generator, as long as you don't go down below that 24. So say you get a windstorm or it's raining and you want to wait a couple days to do the panels, you just got to get the wires ran.
Okay.
So it'll work since panels too.
And we wanted it at 60 to 45 degree angle, but for our time of the year, 45 is fine.
Yeah.
Good.
That should be
On
super.
Pearl Island.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. And if you had a way to adjust it, you can play with it a little bit, find your sweet spot for where you're at, but I think 45 is really
Okay.
That's usually where we default to. So yeah, I need to make up some cables to get to the
We think
panels.
about 100 feet.
100 feet.
100
Okay,
feet.
that's not round trip, that's one way.
One way.
So you need 200 feet. of
Two
wire.
100-foot cable.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Yep, I gotta get my big tape measure.
All right. USA.
Jacka is in East Penn. Thank you. I appreciate it. Action!
That.